All right, so the first thing we're going to do is do everything inside of ZBrush except for the unwrap. You may be asking, why do we need to do anything more with the plane? It's just a flat plane. It's got the normal maps on it. It works great. And in theory it does, and maybe not for a brick wall, we wouldn't do it, but rather than have you build mountains at the same time, I'm going to have you do it for this brick wall so you can get the idea of what we're trying to achieve here. It's always better to have actual geometry backing up your normal maps to make them feel right. I mean, the making the bricks feel like they're pushing out of the wall. Let me show you an example. If I bring up Unity, and this is the wall with just the simple normals on a plane. If I look at it, it's a plane. As I start to get down to here, it starts to blur out. It starts to look a little bit flatter. It looks like a wall. It doesn't feel like that's a brick anymore. It doesn't feel bricky, and now it's even less. So what I can do, and what I have done, is show you an example. But this is the same wall, same texture, same setup and everything, but this has the depth on it that's in here. And as you see, as I turn it sideways, I start to see a little bit more depth, and this feels like it's alive and a real thing. And I start to try and figure out where the normal ends and where the other begins. And it's not really difficult in this case, but even from the top, you'll see that you get some kind of cobblestoney feel. So that's what we're looking for in this case. Again, it may not be what you do for a brick wall, and we're going to put parts of this together to make it feel like a bigger wall anyway, but for now, we're going to do it to this so you understand how it works. Okay? All right, back to ZBrush. So we're going to do the ZBrush version first. It's really easy to do inside of ZBrush and Max if we don't overthink it. And what I was talking about last week was using decimation and stuff, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do a simple way. I'm going to take this tiling master texture. I'm going to turn this around a little bit for myself here, and I'm going to take that tiling texture, go to W, so I have the move tool available, Control Shift D, which is the same thing as duplicate right here, remember? And then I'm going to move this in front of my plane. Now I know it's got the right dimensions, I know it's got it all laid out. There are probably some tweaking I need to do eventually, but if I look at it in here, you'll see it's all cut up. It's actually about 2,000 polys total, or tries. So, you know, I'll have to cut it back a little bit. It's just a wall. We can even go further than that, but let's just take a look and see what I'm going to do here. So, believe it or not, it's pretty simple. We just come in here and we go to the Move Tool brushes and we look for Matchmaker right there. And what we do with Matchmaker is we pull out pretty far and we get that Matchmaker brush big enough to cover the whole thing. And we just drag it out like that. And what it's done is it's given me a three-dimensional version of that plane at the same resolution as it was when I started. Now, what you could do is you could move it back in space like we've been using it, so it's back to here, at least the back side of it, so it never goes past that. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to down-res it a little bit more. Let me rename this to low wall, and then I'll hide everything else. So here's some new tools, and I want to show you these tools not because we're going to use them a lot in this class, but because they're important to understand that you can do almost everything you need to do, in fact more, inside of ZBrush. You don't even need a Max or anything like that. It's a whole different tool set of using poly modeling. But we're just going to remove some of these verts in here, or these edges in here. So to do that, we're going to click on this and go to Z Modeler. I have a shortcut for it. You'll see it's right there. It's going to complain about my brush setup. That's fine. You just say OK. OK. So, and you'll see it brings up this polysphere and stuff like that. So let's talk about how this Z Modeler works. The way Z Modeler works, and you know what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to change the color to see if I can get something darker. No, I can't. So the way Z Modeler works is you don't have a vert and an edge or a poly control inside of like a 1, 2, or 3. What you have in here is if you roll over any polygon or any edge or any vert, you'll see that it highlights. So how do you, I don't know why I have that secondary stuff going on, that's funny. So what does that mean? How do I get to the controls? If I hold the space bar when I'm over any of these options, you'll see I get a menu. So if I'm over space bar over quad, I get this whole control set, and you'll see a lot of them look similar. Scale, QMesh is cool, but polygroup, insert polyloops, all that stuff. Delete, things like that. If I go over edge and I roll over it, it says insert. So let me show you what happens if I click on that without changing the tool that's set into it. It'll insert an edge. You see it did it right there. But what I'm going to do is the opposite. I don't want to insert, I want to delete. And then you'll see that there's a second ridge down here. And this says what you're going to do to the edge you've selected and if it follows the edge loop. So you're going to go edge loop complete. And if I pull back out a little bit here, so if I hold and I just roll over and I click, and then I roll over and I click, and then I roll over and I click, and I click, it's just going to take out all those edges for me. And I could even be more specific to them. But for now, I'm just going to come in here real quick. Oops. And you know what? I do it the other way first. So the way I did it the other day I realized was a little bit better is if I come from this edge and take it out, because there's more divisions vertically than there is horizontally, meaning that the bricks are wider than they are taller. So if I cut them this way, I'm going to have a little bit more of a common setup. So now I've just cut it in a third less. I've cut a bunch out. So if I wanted to do, I could do the others. I'm going to leave it this way just for now. And then I just export it. I don't really care about that part. I'm just going to say export selected and say export. And then I'm going to come over to wherever I'm exporting it. In this case, I'll just do it here. And I'll go master wall. We'll call this tiling low, like that. And that is all for this. Really super easy, right? Okay, we're going to do this again, but we're going to bring it into max this time.